There is a sound a council chamber makes when 8 of the most powerful men in the north all decide to leave at once. I had a tray in both hands, and I was not going to get another chance at it, and my legs had started doing a thing that legs do when they have understood the situation before you have. Somebody shouted at me to get out. I heard about half of it, which is all I ever hear. The man at the top of that table had come up out of his chair, and he was not entirely a man anymore, not all of him, not the hands, and the whole room was going backward through the doors behind me, and there is a law about what happens to an unranked woman who does not yield to a shifting alpha, and the law is that nothing happens to him at all. I put the tray down on the table. Then I said a name out loud that nobody in that hold had said in 3 years. It started 3 years and 11 days before that, at a river, and I will be brief about it, because I have had to say it a great many times since, and I have never once managed it well. His name was Emric. He was 6. He was the only child of the Alpha King of Highfell, and the whole of that hold turned like a wheel around him. And on a bright cold Tuesday, in the 3rd week of spring, he went down to the Carden with the person who was minding him, and he did not come back up. The person minding him was me. I was 22. I had been 3 months in that household, and I had the boy in the afternoons because he liked me, and because a king's son is allowed to like whom he pleases. The ice at the Carden comes off in plates in the 3rd week of spring, and it looks exactly like the bank does. He was 8 feet ahead of me. I want to be accurate, 8 feet. And I went in after him inside 2 seconds, and 2 seconds was not the difference. They got me out. The cold took the hearing on my left side and never gave it back, and that is the only mark on me from that day, and I have never once thought it was a fair distribution. I was not dismissed. Nobody blamed me out loud. Lord Asmund said the word carelessness twice in a corridor in the 1st week, and then stopped. And the king said nothing at all, to me or about me, and the household closed over it like water. 11 nights later I made up a tray and carried it to the door of the king's chamber, and set it down and ran. I do not have a good reason. People want one. I have been asked by priests. The honest answer is that I had been carrying a small supper up that corridor every evening for 3 months for a boy who liked bread with the crust cut wide, and on the 11th night my hands made one anyway, and I could not think what else to do with it, so I took it up. And then I did it again, the next night. And the next. Bread. Always. Broth in the cold months, and cold meat in the warm, and a small cup with a chip out of the rim, which had been his, and which nobody had put away, because nobody had been into that room to put anything away, and which I had washed and kept and put on the tray on the 1st night without deciding to, and could not then find a way to stop. 3 years. 1,000 and some nights, -9 for a fever, and 1 for my sister's wedding, on which I sent up a tray with a kitchen boy, and did not sleep. The rules I built were simple, and I kept them the way you keep a religion. Up at the 10th bell. Set it down on the left of the door, always the left. Do not knock, do not speak, do not wait. Go. For 3 years I ran down that corridor with my apron in my fists like a woman being chased. And in 3 years not one person ever asked me where I had been. I was 25 years old on the night everything went wrong, and it was the 3rd anniversary of the day at the river, and I had the tray made up early because I had known since I woke what the date was. 10th bell. Corridor. Lamp lit. Nobody about. And the door was open, and he was standing in it. I have thought about the noise I made. Everyone in the north has an opinion about what I said in that doorway, and the truth is I said nothing, because I dropped about 1/3 of the broth on my own boots and then went completely still, the way you do. He filled that doorway. He is the largest man I have ever stood near, and he had gone gaunt in 3 years, in a way that made him look bigger rather than smaller, and there was grey in his hair at 35 that had not been there when a boy went down to a river. We looked at each other. I should say now that I had not been within 20 feet of the King of Highfell in 3 years. I had seen him at a distance, at the top of halls, 4 or 5 times a season. He had never once looked at me. I had built an entire private architecture out of that, and the architecture was: he cannot bear the sight of me, and this tray is the only thing I am permitted to give him, and if he ever opens that door, it will be to tell me to stop. Neither of us said one word, and neither of us moved. I do not know how long. Leif told me afterward it was the better part of a minute, and Leif was at the end of the corridor, which I did not know at the time, because I never once in 3 years checked whether that corridor had a guard on it. He looked at the tray on the floor, and then at my hands, and then at my face. And something went over him that I could not read, and have spent a year learning to read since, and I did the only thing my body had been trained to do at that hour for 1,000 nights. I ran. I got about 9 paces. "The crust," said the King of Highfell, behind me, in the first words anyone in that hold had heard out of him about anything that was not business in 3 years. "You cut it wide." I stopped in the middle of that corridor, and I did not turn around. And I said, "He liked it wide." "Yes," he said. "He did." And then, after a moment, so do I. I ran the rest of it. I am not proud of that either. His wolf came down to the kitchens the next evening, and that is when the whole thing came off its hinges. Nobody had seen that animal in 3 years. Not the household, not the council, not his own second. In the north, an alpha's wolf not being seen for 3 years is the sort of fact men count on their fingers in low voices, and Highfell had been counting since the second winter. It came in through the yard door at the 9th hour while the kitchen was cleaning down. 11 stone of black wolf, in a room full of scullery hands. Ilse, who has run that kitchen for 30 years and buried 2 husbands, sat down slowly onto a flour sack and put her apron over her face. A boy of about 14 went straight down like a dropped coat. 2 of the girls were making a noise I can only describe as singing. The animal walked the length of that kitchen, entirely ignoring 9 hysterical people, put its head into my apron, took a fold of it in its teeth, and pulled. "No," I said. It pulled again. "I have not made the tray." It let go of the apron, went to the board where the bread was, looked at the bread, and then looked at me, and then looked back at the bread, and I want it stated for the record that the most feared creature in the north stood in a working kitchen and pointed at a loaf until a woman picked it up. Then it escorted me, all the way up, at my left hip, which was the deaf side, so that I kept turning my head to check it was still there, and it kept being still there. Leif was on the stairs. He got up when he saw us, and then he sat back down, and he was a warrior of 40 with 11 years of that hold behind him, and he put both hands over his mouth. "It has been 3 years," he said. "I am aware." 3 years, said the king's second, to nobody, and he comes down for a loaf of bread. If you want to know what a woman who ran down the same corridor 1,000 nights in a row was actually doing because it was not what she thought it was, and the whole of that hold had been keeping it from her out of kindness, stay with me and follow along so you do not lose the thread. It gets a great deal worse before it gets kind. Lord Asmund of Highfell was the king's younger brother, and he had run that kingdom for 3 years, and I want to be fair to him, because nobody else in the north is. He did it well. Borders quiet, treasury sound, 2 bad harvests handled. He had done it out of an empty chair, with no title, with a brother who signed what was put in front of him and did not come down to hall, and he had been doing it since he was 29, and by the 3rd year he had stopped believing it was temporary, and had started believing it was his. He came to the kitchens himself in the second week after the door. "You are the girl with the tray," he said. "Girl, I was 25. He knew it. You have been very kind. It has gone on some time." 3 years, my lord. 3 years. He looked at the loaf on the board. "And in 3 years, has my brother eaten anything else?" I did not have an answer. I had never once thought about it as a question. He watched me not have an answer, and he nodded, and he went away pleased, and it took me 9 more days to understand what he had just been handed. Here is what I had not let myself notice. At the harvest feast, 2 seasons before, the king's plate had gone back to the kitchen untouched. I had seen it come back. I had scraped it myself. I had thought, he is grieving, and gone on with my night. It came back untouched every time, every feast, every council supper, every treaty dinner for 3 years. Ilsa's kitchen had been sending food up to the high table and getting it back cold for 3 years, and had never once said a word about it. And neither had the household, and neither had I. Because the only thing anybody at Highfell had learnt to do about that man was arrange themselves quietly around him. He would not sit and eat with a living soul. Not since the river. I got the rest of it out of Leif on the stairs, and I got it because I stopped being polite about it. How much of it does he eat? Linnea, how much of the tray? Leif looked at the wall for a while. "All of it," he said. "Every night. For 3 years, it is the only thing that goes into him, and the healers have been treating him for it since the second winter, and there is nothing they can do. Because a man cannot be ordered to eat, and he cannot be watched doing it, and he will not do it in front of anybody." He rubbed his face. "You have been keeping the King of the North alive, at the 10th bell, in a corridor, in an apron. He has never once asked you to. He would take his own hand off before he asked you to." I sat down on the stairs beside the king's second and did some arithmetic I had been refusing to do for 3 years. He knew it was me. "Since the 11th night," said Leif. "He came out on the 11th night and looked down the corridor and saw you go around the end of it. He has known every night since. There is never a guard on that corridor." "No," said Leif. "There has not been a guard on that corridor at the 10th bell in 3 years. He would not look at me. I take him off it. Ilsa keeps your hour clear. She has been moving your shift since the 2nd month and telling you it was the rota. The lamp is lit at the 9th bell every night by a boy whose entire job that is. Nobody has ever queried a missing tray because I signed the kitchen book. I said, the whole household. The whole household, he agreed. 3 years. You are the only person in this hold who did not know you were doing it, and you have never once heard a grown man standing on the other side of that door listening to you set it down, because you cannot hear on that side, and none of us have ever been able to work out whether that was a mercy or the worst thing about the entire business. I had spent 3 years believing I was sneaking. I had spent 3 years believing the only reason he had not stopped me was that he had not caught me. He had been standing behind that door 1,000 nights, with his hand on it, and had not opened it, because the night he opened it might be the night I stopped coming. Something in me that had been frightened stopped being frightened. I got up off those stairs, and I went and did the 2 things I had not done in 3 years, in order. I knocked, and when he opened it, I stayed. "You will want to sit down," I said, "because I am going to say all of this whether you do or not, and it is easier on my neck if you do." Magnus of Highfell looked at me for a moment, and then went and sat on the edge of a chair, in a room that had 1 chair, 1 bed, 1 table, and nothing else in it whatsoever. "You have not eaten at your own table in 3 years. No, you have eaten off a floor outside a door because a maid you cannot look at leaves it there and runs away. I can look at you," he said. "That is not the difficulty, and never has been. Then what is? And the king of the north put both hands on his knees and said, that I would rather be dead than be seen doing it. That is all it is. It is not noble, and it is not grief, and it is not any of the things the priests have told this hold for 3 years. It is that on the day my son went into that river, I was in a council chamber, arguing about a road, and I did not know until the 4th hour, and I have not been able to sit down at a table with people and put food in my mouth since, because that is precisely what I was doing when it happened. The lamp made its noise. So I have taken it off a floor, he said. In the dark, alone, like a dog at a back door. Which is the correct arrangement, and I have never wanted it changed. And then 11 nights ago I stood behind that door, and I found that I could not let you go past it one more time, without once, one time, saying the thing about the crust. 3 sentences, and 3 years in them. I was 4 paces away. It was 2 paces further than either of us needed, and exactly as far as either of us could manage. The cup, I said. The little one with the chip. I have put it on every tray for 3 years, and I have never known whether that was a kindness or a cruelty. And I am asking now, and if it is a cruelty, I will take it off tonight. He did not answer for a long time. It is the only reason I opened the door, he said. Asmund moved 11 days later, and he moved on the tray, because he was not a fool and it was the only lever in the whole kingdom. He did it correctly, which is the thing about him. He had me transferred. A kitchen maid is a household matter, and the household was his in all but name, and there was a post going at the hold's second kitchen at Wenlow, 11 miles down the valley, at better wages, which is the kind of thing you cannot even complain about. And he put a guard on the corridor at the 10th bell. A proper one, from his own men, with an order in writing, for the king's peace and privacy. I went. There was no fighting it. Leif could not countermand a written household order, and Ilse wept, and gave me a jar of the good honey, and I was at Wenlow by Thursday, and I made bread in a kitchen 11 miles away for 4 nights, and I did not sleep any of them. He did not eat for 4 days. I found this out afterward, in the plainest possible way, which was Leif arriving at Wenlow, on the 5th morning, on a horse that had been ridden badly, saying, "Get on." Because a man who has taken nothing but 1 tray for 3 years, and then has the tray stopped, does not simply go hungry. His body had been running on a thread, and Asmund had cut it, and on the 4th night the king of Highfell went down in his own chamber, and was found by the boy who lights the lamp. Asmund had not intended that. I believe that to this day, and I have said so publicly, and it has not made me popular. What he had intended was the Fitness Council, which he called for the following Tuesday, and which the collapse handed to him, wrapped in ribbon. 8 lords of the north in the council chamber at Highfell, and the petition read out in his own voice, and I have to say it was not even dishonest. His brother had not held a council in 3 years, had not sat at his own table in 3 years, had been found on the floor of his own chamber, and was being kept alive here. He was gentle, and gentleness from him was the worst of it, by an unranked kitchen maid at the 10th bell in a corridor, a woman who had also, and he was sorry to have to say it, been the person minding the boy at the river. That last part had never been said out loud in that hold in 3 years. The regency would be confirmed. The boy would be declared dead in law, which he had never been, because his father had never signed it, and the succession would settle on Asmund, and Magnus would be kept comfortably at Highfell with every care. 2 of those 8 lords were going to vote for it. Then 3. I was standing at the back of the chamber, where I had no business being, because Leif had put me there, and dared anyone to say anything. And Magnus of Highfell sat at the head of that table, and did not defend himself, because every fact of it was true. So I went and got the tray. I had made it at the 9th bell, out of habit, in a kitchen, 11 miles from where I was supposed to be. Bread with the crust cut wide, broth, and a small cup with a chip out of the rim. There is a sound a council chamber makes when 8 of the most powerful men in the north all decide to leave at once. "Emric," I said. The whole room stopped, because nobody had said it in 3 years. His name was Emric, and he was 6, and he liked the crust cut wide, and he had this cup, and I was the one who was minding him, and I was 8 feet behind him, and I have never said any of this out loud in 3 years, because this house closed over it, and I let it. My voice was doing something I could not control. "My lords, you are about to vote that this man is unfit because he cannot eat in front of people. He cannot eat in front of people because he was in this room, at that table, arguing about a road, when it happened. Every one of you has sat in this room since. You did it this morning." Asmund said my name in a warning voice. "Once, I am not finished. You want to know if he is fit. Then watch him do the hardest thing anyone in this hold has done in 3 years, and it is not holding a border." And I put the tray down on the council table, in front of 8 lords of the north, and I did not leave the room. He came up out of that chair. That is the part they all tell. He came up out of it, and the grief came up with him, and it did not come up as a man I have been told since that half that room had never seen an alpha lose the shift, and I hope they never do again. It took his hands first. The table went over on one side. Somebody shouted at me to get out, and I heard about half of it, which is all I ever hear. Every soul in that chamber went backward through the doors. There is a law in the north about what happens to an unranked woman who does not yield to a shifting alpha, and the law is that nothing happens to him at all. I knew it standing there. I had known it walking in. I did not move. My legs went at some point, and I finished it from the floor, which was undignified, and which I would do again, and what I said, over and over, was not brave or wise. It is on the table. It is on the table. Nobody is watching. It is only me. It is on the table. It took a long time. I have never told anyone how long, and I will not. What I remember is the animal coming down the last of the way and putting its head into my apron, the way it had in the kitchen. And a man's hands coming back, and then the king of Hyfel sitting down on the floor of his own council chamber, with his back against the wall, and eating bread out of a tray in front of one witness, and crying in a way that I am not going to describe. Because 8 lords were in the doorway, and they saw it, and that is enough people. Then he drank out of a cup with a chip in the rim. The vote was 7-1 against the petition. The one was Asmund, and he cast it, and I have always respected that he did not pretend otherwise. He was not exiled. Magnus did something colder, and I argued against it for a month, and lost. He confirmed his brother as steward of Hyfel, the title. In law, in public, with the seal the thing Asmund had been doing without a name for 3 years, and then required him to hold the Fitness Council's own record read, out in the 4 valleys, in his own voice, including his own vote. He is steward still. He is extremely good at it, and he cannot be in a room with me for more than a quarter of an hour. And we manage. I was ill 4 days after the chamber. My good ear rang for a month. The other cost is not on my body, and I am going to be honest about it, since I have been honest about the rest. I said a name in a room in front of 8 lords, and I opened 3 years of my own silence to do it. And it did not close back up afterward. I dream about the Carden more now than I did before, not less. There are mornings I am no use to anyone until 9. He knows exactly what that arrangement costs, because he pays the same bill from the other side, and we do not discuss it much. And it is the reason the 2 of us work. The boy was declared, in the end, not by the council. by his father, in his own hand, 4 months later, in the spring, on the anniversary of nothing in particular, because he said he was not going to let a date own it. It took him the whole morning to write 11 words. There is a marker at the Carden now, at the bend, and it does not have a date on it either. A year on, this is what my life is. The high table at Highfell is set for 3, and always has been since the spring. Him, me, and a place at his left that stays empty with a small cup on it, and there is not one person in that hold who thinks it is strange anymore. And the lords of the 4 valleys have stopped asking, and one of them last winter set his own son's place the same way, and did not explain himself to anybody. He eats in hall, every night, in front of 200 people. It took 11 weeks, and it was not pretty for the first 4, and Ilse cried into a pastry the first time he finished a plate in public, which she denies. The kiss came in a kitchen, in the spring, at the 9th hour, with flour on both of us, and it was 1 breath long, and it was not what I expected, which is that nothing in me caught fire. Something in me set down. 3 years of running down a corridor with my apron in my fists, put down on a flagstone floor, all at once. And his wolf comes to that kitchen every evening at the 9th hour and puts its head into my apron and pulls, because it has decided that this is its job now, and nobody has been able to stop it. And Ilse keeps the loaf ready for it and pretends she does not. Last night I came up the corridor at the 10th bell out of pure habit, with nothing in my hands at all, and the lamp was lit, and the boy whose whole job that is was just going round the end of it. The door was already open. It is always open now. That is the only change to that room in a year, and it is the only one I ever wanted. So tell me, was the household right? 3 years of moving my shift and taking the guard off that corridor, and never once telling me what I was actually doing. Leif says a woman who knew would have stopped, or worse, would have started performing it. I say I had a right to know what I was carrying. We have argued about it for a year, and neither of us has moved, and I would like some outside opinions. Tell me your theory below. And if you want to know who came up the Valley Road last autumn, asking about the marker at the bend, because that is a whole other story, and it very nearly took this house apart again, comment the chipped cup. And stay with me. Magnus and I are not finished. Follow along, and I will tell you that one too. And wherever you are listening from tonight, somebody is probably leaving something outside your door and running. Open it. You would be amazed what has been going on out there.